West Side Story, one of the greatest musicals ever created, one of the greatest love stories ever told. A movie so good, they made it twice. Two of the best films I've ever seen, with the original being the first film I've ever seen. But we can't like two things. Whatever isn't the best deserves to be forgotten. So today we're looking at the differences between West Side Story from 1961 to West Side Story from 2021, with a little bit of West Side Story, the stage show. The original story of West Side Story is better suited for a simpler film, because the story itself is simple. The actual love story between Tony and Maria goes by really fast, and we all know the basic premise of Romeo and Juliet. After the rumble, Tony returns to Maria confessing he killed her brother, and then they sleep together. That's odd, but when you do see the film like a modern myth, the decisions like that become more forgivable. The remake is a lot more realistic and dramatic, so it feels less like odd story beats and more like these characters are psychopaths. This somewhat makes the original film's story better by default, because it suits the narrative better. However, I prefer the writing of the remake to the original. Most of it is the same, but the new additions improve the already great script, or give certain characters more focus. I can hardly tell you anything about Chino in the original film aside from what he did. But in the remake, I can see he's a nerd, ambitious, and kind of a pushover. And the remake knows its drama. In the original film, if you were to cry at any scene, it would probably be the end, where something happens. In the remake, you're just as likely to cry at a boy like that. I wouldn't cry at any of it though, I'm just better. Not all changes are perfect though. Some may disagree with me, but I prefer Tony killing Bernardo only on accident to Tony killing him in a blind rage, even though that was set up at the beginning of the remake. When he intentionally kills someone, I'm not as empathetic to his own death. I find it funny how the more real the film is, the less I like these two. And this is a problem that every version has, but we all want Act 1 to end with Tonight Quintet and Act 2 to begin with the Rumble. But that leads to Act 2 being a lot slower with a lot less songs. And in the remake especially, Act 2 is kind of a pain. If I could, I might have put One Hand, One Heart after the Rumble, but I'm not in the guild, so to speak. So script-wise, I like the remake, but story-wise, I prefer the original. One of my favorite parts of theater is seeing different creatives do the same show their own way, and I love that we got to see it here. The original cast of West Side Story was a great group of actors. Not singers, however. Many actors in the original film were dubbed for the songs. Richard Beymer was dubbed by Jim Bryant, Natalie Wood by Marnie Nixon, Russ Tambin for Tucker Smith. Even Rita Moreno was dubbed for A Boy Like That. Dubbing is perfectly fine, and I'm on board with bringing it back in new films, but these actors can only be so good when they're not even singing. Even still, Richard Beymer can portray the joy and wonder of Tony very well. Russ Tambin has the immature playfulness of Riff down immaculately. And I don't need to sell you on Rita Moreno, she won an EGOT. And Natalie Wood is Maria. That is a white woman. Yes, that's another problem with the original cast. All the brown face. The 1961 film has a troubled past with whitewashing by having two lead Puerto Ricans played by white actors, while actual Latin American actors had to wear makeup to darken their skin. This is upsetting to look back on in the history of film, and if someone would rather not watch this because of it, that's a solid reason. And I need to remind you all that it takes a chronic lack of self-awareness to whitewash a film about the struggles of people of color, and anyone involved in an all-white cast of West Side Story must be ashamed of themselves. We'll get to that later. The 2021 West Side Story has another incredible cast of actors who can sing, and have more difficult roles than before, for better or worse. In the modern West Side Story, Ansel Elgort plays Tony, but the character has changed. Tony now has a backstory of having gotten into a fight with some people and almost killing a kid. That sounds okay, and it was supposed to make the murder of Bernardo explainable, but that leaves us with a Tony who still has the magic and wonder of the original, and yet the potential to murder at any time. This kind of makes songs like Maria very distracting to me, that at any moment he can kill. This new balance that needs to be achieved between joyous kid and murderer is virtually impossible to play, and Ansel Elgort is not doing any favors. In the dramatic scenes, he really shines, but when he's supposed to be a cute boy in love, he feels wooden. In the end, it's a balance that I don't know a single actor who could have done well. Unlike Tony, Riff is a character that could be played perfectly, and Mike Feist almost does it. Mike Feist is absolutely incredible. He can sing very well, he can move very well. I used to listen to Cool and think this is a fun song, but now I listen to it and think, God, I want to do that. And he plays Riff very well, but the problem is Riff is a character that needs balance. You see, in West Side Story, Riff wasn't always the leader of the Jets. Tony was the leader. Tony left, Riff took over. So Riff needs to be a mix between two things. He needs to be cool, as he's the leader of the Jets. He's charismatic, he's physically fit, he has all the one-liners against Bernardo. He's so cool, he sings a song called Cool. But he also needs to be an ass. He's racist, he's a loser, he's immature, he's too stubborn to listen to what Tony has to say. And this is advanced riff theory. And where does Mike Face go? He's a little too cool. And this is mainly because of some line reads that were too quiet or confident.
We're Jets, the greatest! We're Jets, the greatest!
Other than that, incredible, and I don't think anyone else could have been better. Rachel Zegler is spectacular. I will never forgive any of you. Her singing, her acting, her accent, which I thought was real until last year. You would never be able to tell me that this was her first film, and I can only hope she does more musicals in the future. Ariana DeBose is also great as Anita. She's different to Rita Moreno, but she takes from the best of what Moreno did and brings her own style to it. This was also the role that got her Oscar. And the last film she did before it was The Prom. So all in all, kind of the GOAT. And David Alvarez is great as Bernardo, but unfortunately he gets less focus in this film compared to the original, which is a real shame. Sean Harrison Jones' action is some fun. Iris Menas is a non-binary actor who plays anybody's, which by the way, anybody's being a trans person in this film is a choice that is so good I'm surprised no one did it already. Josh Andres Rivera plays Chino, which is cute because he's currently dating Rachel Zegler, and the veritable ensemble of trained dancers who can take this film to brand new heights. The casting behind the remake is so great, it made me see completely new sides of the actors. For example,
Oye, Javi! Ponle fuego!
What was that? I only noticed on my last rewatch of the film. What does it mean? I can't stop thinking about it. Alright, back to the video. The soundtrack to West Side Story is impeccable. One of the greatest of all time. The songs sung by the cast of characters are fantastic, and the instrumental pieces will stick with you forever. And the use of motifs is fascinating. There's a great video by Sideways which goes over the music theory behind the Discord motif and how the motifs are used to inform us about the characters. I highly recommend it if you're as into musical storytelling as I am. The original film, just like with its script, captures the wonder behind this classic soundtrack. The power and sense of weight in the instruments is just as good as we remember, and luckily the remake doesn't fix what isn't broken. The two differences between both versions of songs is the singers and, oddly, the lyrics. The lyrics of some songs were changed in both versions. The original altered lyrics likely because of the feud between Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim, and the remake wanted to bring back the lyrics from the original play or change those to be more of Sondheim's vision, and I prefer most of the lyric changes. More than most other songs here, I have little preference between the different versions of the instrumental pieces. The remake's versions were recorded more recently and thus a lot clearer, and it's really his preference. I like the original prologue, Either a Rumble, and the remake's Dance at the Gym, which has the added bonus of being split into 3 parts on the album. The Jet song is better in the remake because of Mike Face, but the original is far from inferior. Something's Coming is one of my favorite songs in all of musical theater, and while the remake's version of it is good, the original with Jim Bryant completely eclipses it. Both in song and performances, Richard Beymer gives the song everything it needs. I never put it together that he isn't the one singing. I also love how the scene looks, it's almost glowing with vibrant pinks and blues. With Maria, both versions are equal to me, though I somewhat prefer the remake. The balcony scene and America are better in the remake because of Ariana DeBose, David Alvarez, and Rachel Zegler, all 3 so good. We then move on to the worst part of the remake and what makes me hold back from saying it is better. The original show, there was a song called G Officer Krupke, in which the Jets sing about how they're going to lie to everyone about what happened at the Rumble. 2 problems I always had with this is just how ill-timed the song is. Like Riff and Bernardo just died, read the room action. And how the song is directed at Officer Krupke, and not Lieutenant Trank, the GOAT, who has sextuple as many lines. But the song is great, from the bombastic instrumental and the Jets jumping around and playing multiple characters. It's easily the most fun to be had in the show. And as an aside, I've always thought someone should try doing a performance of this song where action plays all the parts, and the other Jets are an onlooking audience. That'd be fun. The original film does it justice. Everyone singing and dancing with all the energy the song requires, and it reaffirms to the audience that the Jets are just kids, racist, sexist kids over the age of 40. It even fixed the issue of when the song is set by having it before the Rumble instead of after, with riff singing, and this is Russ Taman's best scene in the film. Then, there's the 2021 version, where in a move I will never understand, the song was changed again. The scene has the same meaning, but all of the energy has been sucked out and never really comes back. The intro of the song is such an obvious downgrade that I don't think I need to point it out. And do you know how people can't watch something cringy without squirming? I don't do that, so listen well when I say that when we got to the chorus of the song and they were still doing the quiet beginning, I was shriveling away in the cinema seat. The dancing in the scene is like running a marathon in the wrong direction. It takes a lot of effort to do what you do, but you're not doing it right. It's staged and shot in such a small way in space. Everything is so minor. You need incredible talent to do what was done, but I feel nothing watching this. And that's not right. On the brighter side, Cool was changed for the remake, and I believe it's probably the best change the remake made. The context of the song in the original film is the Jets need to calm down and wait before getting their revenge for Riff's murder at the Rumble, and for some reason, Baby John is the one talking. Not even action, Baby John singing Cool. Baby John singing Cool is like if Spider-Man died, and all of a sudden, Robbie had something to say. In fact, Robbie has something to sing. Spider-Man No Way Home and West Side Story are forever linked in history. In the new film, Tony sings Cool in an attempt to cool down Riff and convince him to not do the Rumble. That is so smart. One Hand, One Heart, A Boy Like That, and I Feel Pretty are more emotional in the remake, although I Feel Pretty drags a little when watching the movie, and I don't like Somewhere in the remake. I like how they brought back Rita Moreno to play Doc. Very cool change. But she's not an important enough character to take this number from Tony and Maria. It's a good idea, showing that things haven't changed much in over 60 years, but I think it takes away from Maria and Tony. You may assume by process of elimination that my favorite version of the song is from the original film, but I actually like that Tom Waits covered the song. So as you can see, no bias. And then with set design, costume design, cinematography, and color grading, there's not much contest. The remake being a more modern film comes with many advantages of the advancements in filmmaking. That's to be expected anyways. The original film comes with an intermission. You don't see that anymore, even though we probably should. So if you want to see a film that's wonderful and feels like visual gold, I recommend you watch the original. But if you want a well-written, well-shot, well-casted film from 3 years ago, I highly implore that you watch the remake. Or perhaps you're one of those people who doesn't like musicals at all, in which case this is all one ear and out the other. Nothing I can do or should do about that. Live your own life.